So let's start. So I'm here with Jen Heemstra. Heemstra?
Heemstra.
Heemstra. Sorry, Jen Heemstra. She is the Charles Allen Thomas Professor of Chemistry and the chair of the chemistry department at Wash U. And for those of you who don't know, that's actually a really prestigious position. She's done quite well for herself. But the reason why I'm actually talking to her is that she's curious about failure.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here on your podcast.
It's more than an honor for me, and I was very enthusiastic, and I've been paying attention to some of the things that you've been saying um, online, and I'm just excited to get to know you.
Well, well, it's mutual. I think, there's a lot of these conversations that need to be had in academia. And as you well know, right, it's acceptable to show up and talk about your research, but it's only starting to become more acceptable to show up to places and want to have conversations about how we do research and how we, gosh, feelings, how we
Oh
feel,
my gosh, right?
how our emotions come into play when we're doing research and all of those different things. And so I'm grateful that you're putting these ideas out into the community.
Thank you. So maybe that's where we'll start. So I'm curious about your career. How did you get into chemistry? I'm gonna put this out there.
Yeah.
So my background is chemical engineering, but I do realize that there is a lot more males that are in those kind of professions. So how did you get interested in that? That seems somewhat atypical.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, chemistry, I think a little bit ahead of the chemical engineers on gender diversity in our field, but we're still working on that, especially in the professoriate, especially in research intensive institutions. And when I was coming through school, gosh, now 30 or so years ago, it was still a little bit behind where it is now. But the short answer is I had really fabulous mentors all the way through. The long answer, of course, is more complex, and I largely became a chemist through circumstance and accident. I became a scientist actually because my eighth grade science teacher told me that I was bad at science, which seems like a very number one odd thing to tell an eighth grade girl that she's bad at science, but so were the days back in the 90s. But also that people who know me and know how stubborn I am probably would say that it completely makes sense that if somebody told 12-year-old me that I couldn't do something, then that would be exactly what I would do. But it wasn't nearly that direct. It was more that, and this gets into really the failure stuff, is that I was told as an incoming ninth grader that I hadn't done well enough in science. I wasn't good enough in science to be in the science intensive track at my high school. And so I wasn't allowed to take biology in the ninth grade. I had to go take typing or something instead, which as a department chair is like a shockingly useful skill, right?
It is, yeah.
Type a lot of emails all day long and I'm fast at that. But then because of that, I needed something to do after school. And my friends who were all allowed to take biology, they were in this Science Olympiad club. And they said, hey, you should come join Science Olympiad. And I said, no, bad at science. They shouldn't do this. And they said, no, the coach is really amazing. And you should just come hang out. Even if you don't do any science, just come hang out in the classroom. It's a fun place to be. So I did. And I walked in. And Dr. Marcia Sprang, who was a biochemist who went into industry and then had become a high school teacher because she found she enjoyed that a lot more, which is actually so ironic that I now do biochemistry, but it was not a direct path. But Dr. Marcia Sprang is the reason why I am a scientist, because I walked in, she said, welcome to Science Olympiad. And I think I said, no, I'm bad at science. I don't belong here. And she was like, well, what's going on? I was like, well, no, I wasn't allowed to take ninth grade biology, so I don't belong here. And she just looked at me and said something to the effect of, well, I really don't care about that. And we have this geology subject in Science Olympiad, and nobody takes geology. So you're not behind by not being in a science class right now. So go have at it. Here's, probably about 200 different rock samples. Study them, learn what they all are, read up on these books, and you'll be ready for this topic. And that was what really drew me into science. I found that I loved it. And then over time, I started doing more and more events. And over time, she said, okay, so like, tell me again why you're not good at, or why you're not, in ninth grade biology. And I think I said something like, yeah, I was told I wasn't good enough at science to do that. And I seem to recall she gave like the hugest eye roll ever, which was so validating to me as a human being. And then said, okay, we're going to fix that. We're going to find a way for you to catch up and get to do all the classes that you normally would. But over time, it was really this teacher, Dr. Sprang, as a mentor, as a teacher, as a role model who made me love science. And so I went off to college knowing I wanted to be in science, but chemistry was not at all on my radar. No offense to anyone who was my professor in my first year or anyone who currently teaches first year chemistry, but I went into college not thinking about being a chemistry major, and my first year chemistry class did nothing to change that for me because it just wasn't the type of chemistry that I enjoyed. But then I took organic chemistry and I didn't hate it. So there was that. And then I needed a night job. I had a morning job. I was putting myself through college. And so I saw an advertisement for an evening or night job working in the organic chemistry stockroom, handing out, checking out the glassware kits for the students who were taking the evening labs. And I thought, well, I didn't hate organic chemistry. And this sounds like a kind of fun job. It was actually really a blast at the end of the day. So I interviewed and I got it. And then I was working in the stockroom. And I actually found myself a year and a half in, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had ditched the major that I'd gone to college to study. And I was just in this place of, I know what I don't want to do. I do not know what I do want to do. And I had to start doing research. And I had no idea how to join a research lab either. So I thought, well, I don't know how to join a lab, but I do know all of these graduate students who are working in labs and they're TAing this lab that I'm going and working at my paid job at. And so maybe I could ask these graduate students how you go about getting into a lab, and maybe they could help me out. And again, I didn't hate organic chemistry, so maybe I could go work in a chemistry lab. And so they helped me to find a position, thankfully with another wonderful mentor, Dr. James Noah, who gave me a shot. And it was just a blast. I absolutely love doing research. And I think for even the first, you talk about like finding your purpose or whatever. So the first year, I would tell people, oh my gosh, I'm working in this lab and I love it and I'm having such a blast. It's not like what I want to do with my life. I'm having so much fun at it. Yeah. And that took me a full year of doing that before I started to think, like maybe this is what I want to do with my life. Maybe this actually could be a career path that I would be excited about. And so then one thing led to another, again, just tons and tons of great mentors. And I decided to be a chemist. I had wonderful mentors who encouraged me to go to graduate school, who helped me to make that possible. And then about a decade or so of self-doubt and other challenges ensued, but wonderful mentors throughout all of that time. And out of that, I found myself in my dream career as a faculty member leading a research lab.
That is very cool. And I love that how there's a little bit of stubbornness involved throughout. I think that's actually a really promising trait to have that the way that I sort of talk about it is being able to give and I know that this sounds really crude, but it's being able to give the world the middle finger, like being able to stand up and say, I'm not going to listen to, what people are going to tell me that I'm supposed to be like, and just really get into it. And then, having those people that whisper in your ear every once in a while, it's like, you're doing okay. That's such an important part of what we actually do.
No, you're right. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Well, as you say, it's like the balance of like self-doubt and confidence.
Yeah.
Just say, I'm not sure if I can do this because it looks really, really difficult. But also, I've done really difficult things before. And if I work really hard, I think I could do it. And to your point, to have mentors come alongside you and are like, yes, that is a difficult thing, but you can do difficult things and you can do this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole process is you feel so uncertain with it, right? And I think that's where people default to instantly thinking that they're doing it wrong when they think that,
Mhm.
oh, it's not working out, or, that there is no, it seems like on TV it's supposed to go so easy. Or what social media that people listen to today, that everything is so easy. But a lot of it is filled with these moments of like, that you don't know what you're doing, and you wish that there was a little somebody just telling you what to
Mhm.
do, or
Yes.
giving you that encouragement along the way.
Yeah, and I'll say there's so many times when I've thought something was out of reach, and one of my mentors has kind of like spoken it into reality for me, that I've been invited to apply for something or be considered for something. I've thought, oh my goodness, there's no way I could have that job. And I've had a mentor say, no, like you could do that. Yeah, let's talk about whether you want to do that or not. But you could absolutely do that. And you're on that path. And yes, you should think about doing that. And what the impact of those conversations is just absolutely, you know, can't be quantified, I think.
Yeah, yeah. How do you carry yourself when there is people that are uncertain around you? And what do you tell them now that you've had this good
Mhm.
mentorship at this moment? What do you do in terms of encouraging them to, you know, and I hate to be that person to encourage people to go into scientific research careers or any particular career or anything like that. But what do you tell people when they're feeling these self-doubts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And a way that I started thinking about it early in my career, and that I still do, is when I talk to students or research any early career researcher or early career anyone about their future goals, and I listen to what they say they do and don't want to do. Right. And the framework I like to use is, hey, there's no perfect job out there, right? Every job has good and bad things. You should learn about all of these different options, learn what are the good things, learn what are the not so good things, and think about which good things are really important to you and which negatives you find most palatable, you're most willing to deal with, and then follow that path. And so when someone tells me, like, I don't want to do X career, to me, then the conversation is, well, that's totally fine, right? The best career for you is the one that's best for you, right? It is the one that best aligns with your interests and your skills and your goals. Um, but it's always a conversation of, okay, let's talk about why you're saying you don't want to do that. Is it that you don't want to do that because there's just aspects of that job you wouldn't enjoy? Or is it that you're saying you don't want to do that because you think that you can't do that?
Mhm.
And if it's the first one, like, awesome, yeah, cool. You have found something you like or something you don't like. But if it's the second one, then we get to have a conversation of, okay, well, why do you think you can't do that? And let's try to break that down a little bit. Let's try to pull out. Often, I see this in myself. There's kind of misperceptions of the world, or of different circumstances that might lead you to think something isn't possible when it really is. Like, if you never see another person who's a graduate student look like they're struggling with the failure of their experiments, you might think, oh my goodness, because I struggle with the failure of my experiments, I could never be a grad student. But then that's just a misperception because we don't have all of the information. And so then you can have a conversation, say, no, there's struggle all the time. People don't always talk about it. I mean, thankfully with social media, I think people are a lot more open about struggles and failures now, which is
Mhm.
actually very, very healthy. But to say, okay, well, let's break that down. What are the challenges? And if this is what you really want, let's find a path forward into that. And I think that gets more and more important the further you go. Actually, I was just on a call this morning with one of our collaborators, and two members of my lab. And this collaborator happens to have just finished being a department chair. And I just started being a department chair a couple of years ago. And it's someone I've known for years. And we were talking about our science. We've been science collaborators for almost a decade now. But near the end of the call, I said, wait, before we get off this call, I feel like I owe it to the early career researchers on this call to just share that, yes, this individual is someone I collaborate with, but also I joke that I have my phone a friend department chair mentors. That when you're like in the, what was it, $1 million question or whatever game, that when you don't know the answer, you get like 2 phone a friends. And so I have this list of people who are current or former department chairs. And pretty frequently I run into a situation where I think, gosh, I'm either not completely sure what to do here, or I would just really benefit from some wisdom from someone who's probably encountered a similar situation and has some thoughts on how they handled it. And I, text one of these folks and say, hey, can I have like a phone a friend conversation with you as a department chair? And they give me fantastic advice. And that this person is one of my frequent phone a friends under that unofficial program that I have for myself and mentors. But I think it's so important because the higher people go in their careers, I think the less obvious, the more their need for mentorship and advice grows, the less obvious those things become, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we really, really need to talk about that more.
And how did you build that community? I think that's like a really difficult thing for most of us that are in the scientific, at least for me. I'm in a little tiny hole. I'm staring at my computer screen. How does one go about of actually building a community that you can rely upon and ask questions? How do you find these phone to friend type people?
That's a great question. I think some of my community, especially my peers, is just realizing that there were other folks out there, as you described it, sitting in your little hole with your computer and your research, but wanting to talk to other people. I tell people that when they become a faculty member, to be ready that it can be a pretty isolating experience because you go from being in a lab with all of these other students and postdocs and you're all peers and you all go hang out outside of work often, or, you're all friends with each other. And then you become the leader. And yes, you're surrounded by people in your lab, but it's really just not the same. And if you have a cohort of fellow people who are at your same career stage leading their own labs, that can be really helpful. But there can be a little bit of this sense of loneliness. And I think I just connected with other people who were feeling that. And we said, oh, well, if we just start talking to each other, then we can each find those connections that we want. And then over time, just in a variety of different ways. I go, we all go on seminar visits or, for those who go around to different places, or you have people who come to your institution and come talk about their research, or you go to conferences. But just anytime I'm interacting with other researchers, I just kind of like take note of like, hey, you're a department chair. And I, for those who I really respect the way that they're doing the job, I just think, okay, well, hopefully I can call on you for help someday. And people have been really great about that. And some of these I've just gone out. Actually, it's so funny. These, a lot of the things I've done that have been really helpful for my career have been a little accidental at first. But when I started doing professional development talks for my research group, the first topic my group asked to hear about was professional networking. And so I thought about it. I made this multi-week presentation where we talk about who's in your network, the different types of people. And then we did an exercise around, well, who do you need to add to your network? And how can you do that essentially through reaching out and having informational interview calls with people who you look up to or who are in career paths you aspire to follow. And as I was assigning this during my group meeting, I realized, oh gosh, I need to do this too, because I still have places I want to go in my career. And so I assigned it to myself and I reached out and I talked to academic leaders in a variety of different places who I knew. And then all of a sudden, right, those people become mentors who I can call on later. And I've just continued to do that more and more because I think the curiosity we have that drives us to do our research and our science we can also aim that same curiosity at things like career paths and leadership.
Mm-hmm.
We just aren't necessarily trained to do that. And so it just takes a little bit of intentionality. But then once you do, it's really a blast. And I think I found that a lot of people really enjoy talking about these topics. And I'm just constantly learning. And it's really
Yeah,
great.
it's really neat because you know, the way that we talk about networking in business school. So I'm in a business school.
Yeah.
I'm a professor of management. Um, and the way that we talk about it is a very strategic way, and it seems like it's very. I don't like it. I never feel like the way that we ever talk about it is. It feels icky to me always in terms of you're doing this on purpose. And the way
You know what? I'm going to interrupt you and say it's so funny you say that because when my group asked me to talk about networking, they didn't ask, hey, can you talk about networking? They specifically asked, we want to hear about how to network without it feeling icky.
yeah.
So I love that you just use that word. But okay, tell me why it feels icky.
So I think a lot of it is, at least for me, it's this idea that you're trying to get something out of it. And so an exercise, two things that I have been doing that have been very helpful, and you probably have seen me online now that I've reached out, and um, I talk a lot about my weaknesses and the problems and experiences that I go through, and hopefully that there's other people that are feeling the exact same thing and going through the same experiences. So it's less about, and I don't know who's actually viewing this as a really awkward, weird thing. And there's often not a lot of, I mean, there's some intentionality behind it, but not a lot. So it's more of just building conversations. And really fun exercise I've just started to do with my class is getting them to do like gratitude or empathy assignment, where the only thing that they have to do is to reach out to people that they just admire and then just say thank you. And that's it. It's without anything attached. Just say, I really appreciate what you're doing. And it's been really interesting because some of them don't get any responses back, right? Because people are busy. But a lot of people are getting responses back, and they're saying how much they love the experience.
That's
So
amazing. What a wonderful, kind, positive thing to do. That's a beautiful assignment. I think I'm going to bring this into my grad class this spring. That is so
it's
great.
different, right? And you just
Yeah.
you just say, I just appreciate you. Um, and that's it. Like leave it as is without any connection. Now, a lot of people, as you know, are gonna like not paying attention, to say the least. Or they just say, yeah, yeah, yeah. But some people do, depending on, and then that's how you can kind of build the right group of people that you're like, you want to resonate with or that you want to talk to.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that so much. Yeah. I mean, we talk about something pretty similar in our group. In fact, I say, okay, well, why does it feel icky, right? Networking feels icky. Exactly what you said, because it can be transactional.
mhm.
But then I said, but you do transactional things that you don't feel icky about, right? Like if you go to the grocery store and pick up some food and you give them money in return for that food, that's a transaction. But you don't likely feel like really, you aren't like, oh, I feel so gross that I just paid $2 for those apples or something, right? Right? Like
Mhm.
it doesn't feel icky and gross. And we can break out what are the parts of that we can then apply to networking in order to make it feel less icky as well.
So like deconstruct all of those feelings that you go through, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. And so like to deconstruct the aspects of to think about transactions that feel totally normal and then to say, well, what is it about it that makes it feel that way? And how can you apply that to networking? Like two things I focus on are, well, when you go to the store to buy groceries, right? You have a purpose for being there for that transaction. I say if you go to the store and you're like picking up food and then you're paying for it and leaving, that's not icky. But if you go to the store and you just wander around looking at people, that might be a little bit creepy, right? And so if you set out to network and you just walk up to someone, you're like, hi, like, and you don't have any purpose, then that's kind of a little bit odd. But if you walk up and you say, hey, I really love this paper that you wrote and I'd love to learn more about it, or I really admire this thing that you're working on, or I aspire to a similar career path as you, would you be willing to share about it? Then that takes away some of it. And then the other part that you really hit on as well is that when you're at a store, you're taking something, but you're also paying, you're exchanging. And you can't, especially with networking where you're asking someone much more senior to like be a champion for you, you can't necessarily pay them back, nor should you try to directly pay them back. But if you're the type of person who is paying it forward, then that also makes it feel like less icky. Like if you say, okay, the things that people are doing for me, I'm going to turn around and try and do those things for other people who are a little bit behind me on the career path or in a different situation, then that just actually makes it feel all pretty great and positive, informative, and a lot less icky.
Yeah. I like that a lot in terms of thinking about here. My dog's going to come in and say hello.
Oh my gosh. I will say pet photo bombs were like
I love
sunrise a couple of years ago, and I love that we still have them. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So the idea of building a group, and I don't like the term networking. I like to think of it as trying to find a group of uh, friends or colleagues that you just want to learn from. And it's not necessarily, strategizing. And that's where you have to remove some of that language of strategizing, at least in my view. But
absolutely.
How on earth did you become this big social network person that everybody is following on Twitter?
Oh, well, that was by accident as well. Actually, my Twitter origin story is a pretty embarrassing one because it shows my lack of sophistication with social media. So I ended up on social media. Well, I was on Facebook since.
Oh, it was on Facebook first. Okay.
Well, no, yeah, I was on Facebook like everyone else, whatever, 10 and 15 years ago.
Friends and family.
Friends and family, posting pictures of my kids. But getting really bored with Facebook, I basically had stopped being on it because I was like, oh, this is just like the same people and it's the same stuff. And it's, yes, that's great, but this just doesn't hold my entertainment. And so I'd actually basically quit all social media about 10 years ago. And then I was at an event, the climbing gym that we went to when I lived in Salt Lake City. They were building this whole new wing and it was gorgeous. And as part of another event, they were giving tours of it. And it was really safe to go in. Like there wasn't any construction happening, but because it was technically a construction site, you could put on a hard hat if you wanted. And I had a 1-year-old back then. And so he put on a hard hat. It just looked really adorable. And they had this competition where if you submitted a photo on social media, you might win a crash pad, a photo from this whole event highlighting their new space. And so my friend who had invited me to this thing got the photo of me with my little 1-year-old with this way too big hard hat. And it was really adorable. And she's like, okay, we got to upload this so you can win the crash pad. And I was like, well, I don't know how to do the social media thing. And she's like, whatever, give me your phone. I'll make some accounts for you. So she made a Twitter account and then was about to post the photo and realized, oh, wait, no, this whole thing isn't happening on Twitter. It's only on Instagram. So she made an Instagram account and posted the photo there. But then I had this Twitter account with my name on it and no profile picture, no nothing, no posts. But over the next couple of years, people would randomly find me on there and follow me and tease me about the fact that I had no profile photo or posts. And then when I moved to Emory in 2017, we were starting up actually our work on failure and really taking that to the next level. And as part of that, we wanted to hire a postdoctoral researcher who specialized in social science and education research or psychology research.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm a chemist. People are coming to my website looking to apply for a chemistry postdoc, but not necessarily a psychology or education research postdoc. And I thought, well, gosh, everyone's always talking about this Twitter thing. Maybe that's a way we can get the word out. So I opened my phone, opened the app, reset my password because I had no idea what it was, logged in, made a profile photo. And my first post was, hey, our lab is hiring an education research postdoc. And it was more, the person who we ended up hiring found us through another avenue that we had advertised, but it got me over that energy barrier. And so now I had this, social media account. And when I'd be in line at the grocery store, I'd open it up and scroll through it. About that time, I was starting to think about a lot of things about leadership in academia, how we do research, how we lead research labs, how we think about professional development for students, how we think about mental health in academia. And I realized, like, wow, there's people here talking about these things. And going back to my whole stubbornness, it was like, well, I've got something to say and I want to say it, right? People who know me probably saw that coming. And I realized, like, wow, this is a place where you can say those things, where you can have that conversation. And so it was just very organic, kind of like you were talking about with your posts. It was really just, I'd be thinking about something and be like, I'm going to go post this. Or I would see something happen and be like, I've got something to say about that and post. And, I don't know. I'm still convinced that there's some alternate universe in which I post all the same things and I have like 82 followers.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? I think that there's just some luck of the algorithm there, but it's not been without its challenges. Social media has some real challenges, but I can't imagine my life if I hadn't gotten that opportunity. It was really just such a privilege to have the community that I became part of and all of the relationships that I built out of those interactions on social media.
Yeah, part of them, I was actually going through a lot of the different things that you were saying, and I was like resonating so much. It's like, oh my gosh, it's exactly what we go through. And I think that's partly it's your realism or your ability to just simply say some of these things, because I think a lot of us feel it. And we're so afraid to voice it. We don't know what's going to happen. And
you're voicing these things too. So what gets you over that barrier?
So it's very challenging, and partly so the way that I got into it. So I thought I would build this platform. So I'm actually trying to build this platform to create non-rejectable research papers.
Yeah, it was sorry about publications, right?
Yeah, and that's how it started. And I, built this thing, spent a whole bunch of money, and then I had to figure out how to actually market this thing. And so I started going, because I spent so much money on the damn thing. And I was trying to figure out how to get it out there so that other people are paying attention. And so there is this like incentive for me to post. But as I started doing it and communicating with, just putting it out there, I realized that there was a lot of people, and you probably felt the same way too, that were resonating, or that they were having this kind of like parallel universes. They were like, what's going on with this? Is that we have this structure of the way that things should be in academia and research, and then there's like our world, which is
that it is.
Yes, the way that it is, right? It is often filled with a lot of despair or boredom or frustrations, and those things seem to resonate with a lot of people. That there is this it's almost like it's this universal thing that's going on, that I think that there is some recognition. And I think it's broadly that there's recognition amongst a lot of people, both in faculty, administration, and students, that things can be done better in terms of how to deal with this. And you being in a department chair role, understanding failure is such an incredibly important thing. Um, I don't know if you're resonating with anything that I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh my God. I'm choosing. There's so many things that are resonating. And I'll say that, I appreciate that you brought up the department chair role in the way that you did, because something one of those things in academia that maybe shouldn't be the way that it is that there's this almost um pathological disrespect or disdain for leadership roles. Right?
Yeah.
Thank you for laughing. It's validating. And I think it comes from, there are certainly people who want to be in those roles because they just want power or attention or title. And so there's this kind of saying of like, if you want the job, then you shouldn't have it. And in some cases, that's accurate. But I think we get to the corollary of that, which is either, oh, we should just choose the person who's the best. No, we're back.
Talking about your leadership role as a department chair.
Yeah, I was saying that, this view, this disdain for leadership roles, it's somewhat justified because, some people just want the title or the power or to feed their ego, and then they probably shouldn't be leaders. But then we fall into this corollary of either saying, well, then we should just choose the people as leaders who are the best researchers, right? Which is not necessarily a strong correlation between your ability to do chemistry research and publish good chemistry papers and lead a department or be a dean of a college or something like that. But the other part of it is that I think that disdain just seeps in to where, like, the number of people who have learned that I'm a department chair and they just look at me and go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then I tell them, like, no, I actually like moved my family and my lab across the country, well, across the Midwest or the South, in order to take this job, right? I packed it all up and left in order to have this job. And it's exactly what you said, which is that, a way I talk to people about it is I'm like, if you don't have a vision for how you wish academia were different, if you don't see a gap between how things are and how they should be, then you probably should not be in a leadership role, right? Because then you're just, 70% of the job is, the kind of annoying administrative stuff that pervades faculty life too, but is, kind of amplified in chair life of dealing with compliance things or, gathering all these files or doing certain processes or just dealing with emails or all of that sort of stuff. And so if that's all you're there for, I can see where people are like, oh my gosh, I would tell that person, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you're department chair. But then the people who really enjoy it are the people who see, okay, there is this gap. Academia is this way right now, but it could be this way. It could be this place where we say, hey, instead of valuing people by their titles or degrees, we're going to value people based on the fact that they're people. And we're going to say that whether you are a student or a faculty or a staff, we are all colleagues and we're all going to treat each other as equals. We have different job duties, but we're all going to treat each other with kindness and dignity and with the same respect as we give any colleague, right? You can say things like that. Or, hey, graduate school should be an opportunity for students to learn research skills. It should also be an opportunity for them to learn the professional skills like project management and communication and negotiation that they'll need for whatever their future career choice is, and that we can customize their experience to make sure those skills are taught in an intentional way. So it's a chance to see that better version of a future and to, not create it on your own, but to work with other people, to empower then other leaders, empower an entire department to create that version of a future for all of the people who are there. And then even if that's only like 10 or 15% of your time as a chair, it makes the other 70% worth it, because there's potential to work with wonderful people and to have real impact and to create a more positive environment for the people who are here. And so I think it's a really amazing job. When people look at me and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? I'm like living my best life ever. I'm absolutely love being a department chair. Yes, there are days I'm overwhelmed by my email inbox or by my meeting calendar. But at the end of the day, it's really just a lot of fun and it's an incredible privilege. And I'm so fortunate that my colleagues gave me this opportunity.
It's very cool to hear that. I actually haven't had too many department chairs on this channel, so it's very cool to hear you talk about this in particular of your passion for other people.
And it's not for everyone. If someone doesn't want to do it, they just don't want to do it. But I think it's one of the ways that you can have impact.
So I think it's really cool though, because what you're saying is simply by repeating that everybody's got kindness and respect and going by those as guiding principles, it changes the conversation a little bit.
Yeah, it's a chance to, you have to be in a place, I was so fortunate to come into a department that wanted to have these values.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a chance to steward that vision of a better version of academia and to work with great people to make it happen. But then there's people who never want to be in leadership, and that's fine too, because they're having so much positive impact in other places.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a lot of friends who say that they'll never be department chair. And I look at them and go, yeah, maybe you don't want to, but there's a good chance you will, because you'll get so tired of seeing people do it really poorly. And you'll know that you could do something better and that would improve the lives of the people around you. And so you'll probably end up doing it. And then they look at me like, oh, darn it, I hate you right now. And then they admit like, yeah, okay. I probably will end up doing this eventually.
So one of the things that's really interesting, I'm thinking about this, is that there is, and I talk about a lot, that part of what the experiences that we have is because there is this efficiency focus all the time. Everything is about efficiency and outcomes and metrics and all that kind of stuff. But then there's the real life. And sometimes you can't get to that moment where you are as efficient as you would like. How do you carry on those conversations with yourself or others, making sure that you're working towards increased efficiency without it feeling icky or strategic or anything like that?
Oh, that's a really tough one to answer, because how I do that for myself is different from how I need to do that for other people. Although that itself is one of the leadership and mentorship skills that we never get formally taught in academia, right? That is like, everyone, you're going to work with all of these people and none of them are you. And none of them are wired the way you are. And the way that you're best going to serve them as a leader and mentor is not necessarily going to be what you want people to do for you as a leader and mentor. And so the efficiency one it's a double-edged sword for me, because I have a personality where I love productivity. I just like love to get things done. And to me, it often doesn't feel, even if it is an extrinsic pressure to get as much done as possible, because of my personality, I feel a very distinct intrinsic motivation to do that same thing. Like, I'm the person where when I make my list to go to the grocery store, I make my list kind of in order of where things are in the store. And then I walk in and I have a strategy of how I'm going to like get through the aisles and get things as quickly as possible. And then if, it's like, oh no, there's some people like chatting on the coffee aisle. So, okay, I'm recalibrating my strategy for how I'm going to go somewhere else first and like swoop back there on the way to the checkout line. And I don't do that because I need that 2 minutes of my day back that I might solve, but rather because I'm just weirdly wired that that's like a fun game for me. It's like, why do people play Sudoku? Because they enjoy the problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I love problem solving around how to do things as efficiently as possible. And for a long time, I thought everyone was like that. And then I realized like I'm not alone in this. I have met a few kindred spirits who are the same way. And they're like, oh my gosh, me too. And we all, have agreed that, our significant others find us really weird for that. But like we'll have a bunch of errands to run. It'll be like, well, what order do you want to do these in? And it's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, I have mapped it out so that we like only need to make right turns and we don't have to go through that traffic jam that always kicks forever. So that comes, but then it's a double-edged sword because I can get to a place where I'm not even enjoying the work anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just really just putting myself on this treadmill of getting things done. And it's an endless treadmill because as soon as it really is a treadmill because you check something off, something new pops up. And so it's just this constant moving, but if you're trying to get to the end, the end doesn't exist. That finish line of done never exists because there's always new stuff. So I have to be careful about that. But I think for people who don't naturally see it that way, I think you have to make decisions for yourself about how much you want to and can get done. But then if there's ways to see the positive impact that has on the people around you, then I think that's a way, you basically just need to find an alternative way to get that intrinsic motivation back, right? So if you're a research advisor, a group leader, and you're like, okay, I got to get through, the revisions on this manuscript as efficiently as possible. It's like, well, yeah, because doing that, if you can do it more quickly, then that student in your lab who's waiting to publish that paper will be able to submit it sooner and have it on their CV sooner. And that's going to benefit them professionally. So now, as awful as that whole efficiency argument feels, you can find a way that you are doing something that has a positive impact for another person.
So one thing that you said that was really interesting is that you were talking about that it's almost like a game and it's playful. How do you get that? How do you program yourself so that it feels like a game, or it feels like it's playful, or it feels like it's you against, you against the world, right? It's like this sort of strategy game.
That's a great question. Some of it is that it is something that is just wired into my personality and comes naturally to me. It's like those things that are, I'm very big into growth mindset, and that it isn't that no one can become like that and can gamify it. It's just that there's things that come naturally to me that might not come naturally to others, and vice versa. I always admit on this one of like, I cannot sing. Other people, my sixth grade son has started playing French horn, and he just like understands notes, and he can hum and he can sing and he can recognize notes. And I am actually one of those people who is literally like tone deaf. I just cannot understand or comprehend or recognize tune. And so I can't sing in tune because I can't even hear what tune is. And so that's something that doesn't naturally come to me. But getting through the grocery store in, the most efficient way possible does, which I used to maybe be like a little bit frustrated by, but it turns out that, I found a career path in academia where that efficiency really, really pays off, right? It paid off in grad school. It pays off in faculty life. But I think anyone, much like I could become a better singer if I really, really, really tried, or I have no rhythm, I'm bad at dancing, but I can become better if I practice. I think it's that idea of, training your mind to say, okay, well, I'm going to gamify this, right? I'm going to take back some intrinsic motivation. And just like, anyone can enjoy playing a video game where you have to, solve some puzzle or doing Sudoku or doing any other intrinsically motivated challenge. I think you can gamify it and just be like, okay, I'm going to see, how quickly I can do this. Or you can tap into your curiosity. You can say, okay, there's a lot of different ways that I could structure my day. Which one is going to help me get these things done in the least amount of time so that I can go home and be with friends, family, pets, the outdoors, my hobbies, as quickly as possible, right? There's a payoff to it. And it might just be things like experimenting with, are there some tasks that I do better in the morning? Are there some things that I do better in the afternoon? Or what are the really important things that I need to schedule for when I'm at my best? And what are the things like, email that you can just do even if you're at the end of the day and you're really tired and you're not at your best? But by putting your tasks in certain places, you could actually be more efficient and then see a benefit for yourself by having some time back. not by then just doing more things. I think that's the key too, is the reward. The reward can't, it's like what's the quote that academia is like a pie eating contest where the reward is more pie. Um, like your reward for being efficient cannot be more pie. Well, it can be more pie, but it can't be more tasks. It has to be
To learn how to, yeah. I mean, you've got a healthy life with many things going on. You've got a family. I listened to one of your videos, and you're saying that you're an avid runner. There's all these things that are going on, which I think is a healthy life. And that sort of says, you don't just eat more pie. That is
very, you can literally eat more pie. Just don't eat more academic task pie.
Because I think it's very easy to get into that, right? Like as we become more efficient with our career, it becomes increasingly more easy to just focus on the career and push everything else out.
Well, and at the end of the day, it's the challenge that there is always more stuff to do than we have time to do it, right? There's an almost infinite number of papers you could read, research grants you could apply for, committees you could serve on, external activities you could do, book chapters you could edit. Mm-hmm. There's this infinite amount, and everyone has to draw the line somewhere. In some ways, I was a little bit strange for my generation of chemistry faculty in that I already had one child when I started my faculty career. And that was in some ways difficult because there were really very few role models for that, especially among women. Mm-hmm. And it was difficult because I could look at my colleagues and say, oh my goodness, you can just work on Saturdays if you want, or you can stay here till 10 at night if you need to. And I just can't do that. Like I have these very constrained hours that I can work. But I think in the end, it actually set me up to have better habits, and it doesn't have to be kids or family. It can be, people could do this with their hobbies, with pets, with anything else going on in their life. But because I had these very firm boundaries on how much time I could spend, I just learned early on that, A, you have to be as efficient as possible if I want to, get this done, but also that I have to walk away when there's still more yet to be done. There's more papers I want to read, but I have to set it down. There's things in my inbox, but I have to shut it down. Oh my gosh. Walk away and go home, right?
You have no idea. I hit a nerve there. So much forgiveness of yourself often, right? Because you're feeling, at least for me, I often interpret this as I feel like I'm a failure. I'm not doing, and I'm not sure if it's just me or, other people, but I interpret all of these moments where I am not holding up to the expectation of what other people are expecting of me, or at least that's I'm interpreting. There's this idea of the looking glass self from sociology from many years ago, where you interpret yourself through what other people are
so I was going to say, where do those expectations come from?
I don't know. That's the thing. Like, and that's where I often, I think it's often because of this sort of focus on efficiency and productivity. And so I interpret that as I am, when I have to go spend time with my kids or say no, or, do all these other things as a husband, as a parent, I often feel like I'm not doing the career in the right way. And I love, that's why I was resonating with many of the things that you were saying, is because you are a beacon in terms of teaching how people can be more psychological safe, right? When they are feeling like this, that it's okay to go take a break and have forgiveness and, go spend time with your family and friends and those kind of things. I think it's so cool what you're doing.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And if social media is an experiment at all, the response I get when I post about this topic tells me that I think most of us are feeling this way. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense, right? That even if you take the extreme case of someone who, goodness, I hope nobody does this, but even if you were even if someone was working 80 hours a week, right? there's still things that they want to do that they have to walk away from.
Mm-hmm.
And so every person, no matter what work-life balance they choose, no matter what work hours they choose, everyone has things they walk away from. And now, granted, there's sometimes some things that you can't walk away from. There's a big deadline and a lot is riding on it. And if you don't stay that extra 2 hours and get it done, then bad things will happen. But I think that I find them with myself, it takes a lot of practice and intentionality to separate those things, to say, okay, what are the 2% of instances where I truly, truly, truly need to stay into the evening or go home, have dinner and fire the laptop back up or whatever, because bad things will happen if I don't get this done right now, versus the 98% of other cases where it's just my brain telling me, no, this has to be done. And I'm like, shut up, brain. No, it doesn't. Yeah. The world will not, nothing bad will happen. My whole career won't be burning down if I don't answer this email before tomorrow. Right.
So I love that, because most of the advice that you see online, particularly stuff that gets traction, where it becomes popular, it's always this work message where you have to get up at 4 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
You have to endlessly work all of the time. And I hear this so much from all aspects of culture.
Is that still being said? I feel like COVID ended some of that, where people were like, life is too short.
I know I'm starting to see a little bit more of that, but it's still this undertone. And so you're right. Are you writing a book?
Yes, I wrote a book.
Oh, you did?
It is not out yet, but I am delighting in the fact that I get to use the past tense for this now. Because when I started writing, it was, I started outlining in 2019 with the idea that I would start writing in January 2020, and I would write a chapter a month, and I had 16 chapters, I think. So I'd be done with the whole thing in a year and a half by mid 2021. And I made it to chapter 3. And then, our world shut down. And then a year later, I picked it back up again and got back into it and was making progress. And then 6 months later, I was interviewing for a department chair job. And then I was moving with my family in my lab and starting as a chair. And then another 6 months later, I was like, okay, we got to pick this back up again. And, I ended up pulling it across the line, basically writing a book between the hours of 6 and 6:30 a.m. every day for 6 months, which I will say I am a morning person. And so we put this weird value judgment, like people who do work earlier in the day are somehow superior or more disciplined. It's just a physiological thing. If you're not a morning person, don't be a morning person. It's not going to help you. But yeah, that was kind of my magical time for writing is, wake up, grab a cup of coffee, a few minutes of prayer meditation, and then all right, open the laptop. And before I look at my email, we're going to write 300 words a day. For a half an hour every day. I love it and got it done. But yeah, so now it's through copy editing and through proof checking and off to the production team. And hopefully somewhere in the world, copies, paper copies will be getting printed any day now, and it will be available in August.
And some of this is in the book. It's telling your experiences as a leader. Maybe tell the audience about what you actually wrote about.
Yes, I could do that. So the title is "Lab Work to Leadership: A Concise Guide to Thriving in the Science Job You Were Never Trained For." And the whole premise, it's basically it's the book I wish I'd had 10 years ago and would have saved me so much agony. And it's this whole idea that especially we probably do this in a lot of domains, but especially in the sciences or in STEM, we train people to be researchers. And then we say, oh, yes, if you're thinking about a faculty career, that's a research job. That's a research job. Do more research and you'll be ready for it. And then we put people into these jobs and then we give them a team of people to lead. And those people are really early in their careers and still in really kind of an apprenticeship or, learning stage, educational stage. And then we don't have a lot of oversight. We don't have a lot of training for any of this. And then we put people in this pressure cooker called tenure in many institutions, right? Where you have 5 or so years to make or break. And, bad things happen, right? I'm actually convinced that my real heart in this project is to create healthier academic culture by helping faculty to be the leaders that they want to be. And so my own story was, I found myself this kind of accidental leader where I'm leading a group of people, but I didn't even necessarily realize I was getting a leadership job. And I definitely was not prepared for a leadership job. Oh, puppy.
Yeah.
And so, but then there's all of this. So then, the idea is that in your world, in the business world, right, there's all of this great literature out there. There are all of these wonderful studies in psychology and business and organizational leadership that we could use to learn these skills. But people in science academia aren't often going and reading those books or looking at those articles. And part of it is, to your point, we just don't have time. You don't have time to read all those books. So my heart in writing this book, I said, this is the book I wish I would have had, of like, okay, you don't have time to go read 20 books about organizational leadership or listen to all these different podcasts, though, hopefully they listen to your podcast. But I can take all of that and distill it down for you, because even if you go read the books, they're not necessarily the context, and the stories and the examples are set to people who are running a company, not leading an academic lab. So I said, okay, I love learning about this stuff. So I will go out and read up on it, at least learn some of what's out there in the literature. You can't learn all of it, because I don't have the time either, but I'm going to go learn some salient things about this and combine it with my experience of being a leader for the last 15 years and put in the context of academia with examples that you might run into as the leader of a research lab in academia. Mm-hmm. And then each chapter is a topic, like something you could read or write an entire book about. It's like, okay, if you really care about that topic, hopefully you go read those books. And I mention a lot of books, but if all you have time for is to read these 4,000 words on conflict resolution or whatever, giving and receiving feedback, then at least hopefully this will give you something really, really actionable that you can bring back to your lab and be a better leader.
I love that. And having very real, we tend to shy away from these things in the academic world. We don't like talking about it. And that's often told as advice. Don't talk about anything that's going on. Just be really, really quiet about it. And I think that's universal. I think many people have that advice. Mm-hmm. So we don't know whether we're doing the right thing or not the right thing. Yeah. There's just so much ambiguity. And we often feel very, alone. So having a book or having just another person that's been there.
Yeah.
Is
well, thanks for saying that. Yeah, that means a lot to hear. Something I didn't necessarily appreciate until I read the very, very kind and generous endorsement quotes that folks sent in for the back cover is that at this point in my career, well, okay, I actually disclose this in the book. If you know the Berkman method analysis, I once did this with my whole research team. And one of my friends is a Berkman specialist and was looking at mine, interpreting it. He was like, okay, Jen, he's like, this metric, emotional energy, he's like, we all feel a lot of feelings. This is how much you like to talk about your feelings. You are a 99 out of 100. He's like, I'm guessing that's not typical in scientists. I laughed out loud, but I was like, oh, okay. That's the deal, is that actually I do feel more, I'm wired to feel more comfortable talking about these things. But also at this point in my career, I feel like I have this privilege that I can talk openly about all of the mistakes that I made along the way. Maybe not all of them, but I can talk about times when I really messed up a conflict resolution situation, or when I was afraid to tell my group about a grant rejection, or a time that I really struggled with failure and didn't think I was cut out for the job. I can tell those stories now. And the hope is that then that allows me to help out someone else who is going through that, but might not be in a position where they can really talk about it openly yet. So as someone can read it, at least feel less alone, then maybe that has some impact as well.
It's such an important thing, particularly hearing that from somebody that is, when you began, the story was that somebody told you that you shouldn't go into a science career, right? And maybe you're not typical in a science career, but at the same time that you have come through all of these issues and that you have grown, developed. I think it's so important for many people to hear that story and all of your stories and anecdotes that you have. I think it's such a fantastic endeavor.
Thanks for sharing that. I think a lot of it, coming back to what we were talking about, networking, is just paying it forward. That I've benefited from so many friends and mentors who have done the same thing for me, who have shared about their struggles, who have shared their wisdom, shared about their mistakes and how they fix those mistakes. That then, if it's a chance for me to do that for others, that's really a lot of fun. And some of it's humorous too. I think it was in my book proposal that I don't think I quite said this, but I would tell people it's like if we sat down and talked about mentoring over drinks, right? Let's just be like one friend to another, right? Like, I wasn't trained for this. Maybe you weren't trained for this either. But we can sit down and we can commiserate about the struggles. We can commiserate about our failures. But then we can also find better ways to do things and better ways to serve the mentees who are in our labs.
I absolutely love it. So, Jen, I do appreciate it, or Professor Heemstra. I do.
Call me Jen. Everyone calls me Jen.
Okay, everybody calls me Dave too. So I always find it really awkward, but I don't know. So thank you so much. Yeah, I deeply appreciate you spending all of this time sharing with this audience. Hopefully there's other people around the world that are going to hear it and resonate with it. I think your story is not only profound, but it's also very relatable. And I do encourage everybody to take a look at this book. And then there's also some great videos online of Jen and as well as a ton of material on Twitter that I just love. So
thanks so much for having me on the podcast. Yeah, people can look for the book coming from Harvard University Press in August, but if you just find me on social media, I'll be talking about it plenty there when it comes out.
All right. Well, back to your regular duties. I know you got chair duties to do. I'm sure you've got all sorts of emails.
This has been the most fun break from all of those things and from emails. So thanks so much. Thanks for doing this podcast. Thanks for having me on it.
All right. Thank you.
Right. Take care.
Okay. Bye.